All right, today we're going to talk about something that gets to the very heart of faith. It's this tension, this conflict, really, between the things we do on the outside, the good deeds, the rituals, and what's actually going on in our hearts. Let's get into it.
And really, it all boils down to this one really personal question. It's a tough one, too. It makes you stop and think. Could all the good things I'm doing actually be distracting me? Getting in the way of who I'm truly meant to be?
So to really get our heads around this, we have to go back to the source. There's this one key piece of scripture that it lays the whole thing out. It sets up what the real priority is supposed to be.
Wow, to obey is better than sacrifice. This was the prophet Samuel talking to King Saul. And the message here is, well, it's crystal clear, isn't it? God is more interested in what's in your heart, in your genuine obedience, than he is in even the most impressive, most correct religious ceremonies. It basically creates a ranking, a hierarchy of what's truly important.
Okay, so let's break this down a bit. On one hand, you've got sacrifice. This is all the outward stuff, the rituals, the good deeds you do, the offerings. And let's be clear, this stuff isn't necessarily bad. But then you have obedience, and that's all about your inward state. It's about really, truly wanting to follow God's command from the heart. The real danger zone is when that first list of things, the outward actions, starts to replace the second one. And what's so fascinating is that this wasn't just some abstract philosophical idea. No way. This was a direct, pointed criticism that came out of a real-life event. And to understand it, we have to look at the story of the guy it was actually said to, King Saul. So here's the story, laid out step by step. God gives a command, super clear, no room for interpretation. Then Saul just disobeys. He spares the enemy king and keeps the best of the livestock. But here's the kicker. His excuse. He tries to spin his disobedience into something holy. He says, oh, I saved them so I could sacrifice them to God. He literally tried to use a religious ritual to cover up his blatant disobedience. Of course, Samuel saw right through that and delivered that famous line. And that's the whole point, isn't it? Good intentions don't get you a pass for disobeying a direct command. Okay, but this whole thing goes even deeper. The text presents this as more than just a choice between a right action and a wrong one. It's framed as a fundamental battle between two ways of living, two states of being, serving in the flesh or serving in the spirit. Now, it's really important to understand what we mean by the flesh here. It's not just talking about your skin and bones. In this context, the flesh is that fallen, self-centered part of our nature. It's our default setting. The part of us that leans on our own ideas, that wants our own glory, that trusts our own judgment, even when we think we're doing something for God. So let's look at Saul's actions again, but through this new lens. He spared the livestock, and his excuse sounded so good, right? It's for a sacrifice. But spiritually, that was an act of the flesh. And get this, he also built a memorial. But it wasn't to honor God, it was to honor himself. His service was all about him. And when you peel back the layers, what do you find? Rebellion. Idolatry. And you better believe the consequences were huge. The very next thing Samuel says after obey is better than sacrifice is this. It basically equates what Saul did, that insubordination, that serving in the flesh, with really serious stuff, like witchcraft and worshiping idols. And because of that, Saul was rejected as king. Game over. So, if serving in the flesh gets you rejected, then what's the alternative? What's the right way? Well, the scriptures point us to a totally different kind of worship, one that goes way beyond a specific place or a set of rituals. And here it is. This is the ultimate guideline coming from the New Testament. It says true worship isn't about where you are or what you're doing. Notice that word must. It's not a suggestion, it's a requirement. We must worship from our spirit in truth. And that right there is the polar opposite of serving in the flesh. But listen, this isn't a passive thing. It's not about just kicking back and letting things happen. It's an active fight. We're called to have a certain kind of spiritual strength. First, to stand firm, especially when things get tough. Second, to be strong, because you have to know there's going to be resistance. And maybe most importantly, to put on the armor. And what does that mean? It means you're relying on God's protection, not your own strength, not your own good deeds. So after everything we've looked at, from this ancient king's epic failure, to this call for a new kind of spiritual strength, we land right back where we started. It all comes back to a personal question for you and me. All right, let's just quickly recap the main points here. Number one, what's in your heart, your obedience, is way more important than any religious ritual. Number two, serving from your flesh, your own self-will, is seen as rebellion, even if you have the best intentions. The real alternative? serving in spirit and truthfulness. And that, at the end of the day, means depending on God's strength, not your own. And that leads us to the final, and maybe the most challenging question of all. This is where we take Saul's story out of the history books and put it right in front of the mirror. It's the time to ask ourselves, really ask, am I serving in the spirit or am I serving in the flesh? What's really driving my actions? Is it my own ego, just dressed up in religious clothes? Or is it something genuine, something heartfelt, flowing from my spirit?